Are we recording? Yes, now we are recording. All right. So welcome, everyone. This was an idea that Meredith and I had together about trying to get people to talk about the experiences they've had teaching classes online. And what we have here is three great people, Jeff Jacobson, Meredith Horne, and Justin Aucoin, who all in different ways have taught online classes. Jeff taught a 13-week ongoing class. Justin teaches several ongoing classes, 6 and 8 week long, and Meredith herself has tried to teach the practice runs online as well. So what we wanted to do was start talking about what the ins and outs and the ups and downs of all this were. I want to start this off with, hold on, everyone's joining suddenly. I want to start this off with letting each one of the three introduce themselves and briefly describe what their experience is in the realm of real-time online classes. And then I have a series of questions that we'll go through just to try and pick some brains on different difficulties and different strategies. So let's start with, let me introduce Jeff Jacobson, Maestro Lot Ramirez from the LA, Southern California area. Jeff, go ahead and tell us what you've been doing.
Hi, I'm Jeff Jacobson, aka Maestro Lot Ramirez. I'm out of Caid and SoCal, LA. So for me, a lot of this sort of revolves around the online teaching has sort of evolved from COVID needs. So I've been in the background of a lot of the transition that people have been making for their COVID experience and online teaching for a number of different elements, whether it's YouTube online or there's a number of different places that people in Caid are teaching online, and I'm in post-production for film and video, so it was sort of an easy transition for me to start helping with kind of film aspects of that and having the technology to set that up. So and helping sort of guide people in a lot of different ways for their COVID. I also, like David said, I've been teaching a ongoing class with the Tattershall School of Defense out here in SoCal, and we've had to do a lot of adaptation, both initially with our class that was running that somebody else was teaching, and what do we do now, and then into a pre-planned, executed online class and looking into the future of what we're going to be doing with online teaching. So that's kind of my basic overview, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Next up, we have Meredith Horne, known as Provost Marguerite de Lyon, here in Atlanta. She's in the DC area with me.
Hi.
Meredith?
Yeah, hi.
Go ahead.
So I guess to start, I am trying to run my baronial rapier practice on a weekly basis and just kind of keep that going, keep people in shape. The people we have been looking at some of the online material that so many people are putting out these days for at-home practicing. As such, I've been focusing more on how do you get that practice atmosphere and really more focused on drills than new content, so to speak.
Excellent. Thank you. And thirdly, we have Justin Aucoin, known as Maréchal Remy Delamontagne. I thought I had that. Delamontagne de Gascogne. He's in the Boston area in the East. And he has constant classes. He's got beginner classes and advanced classes. So Justin, go ahead.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Justin. I'm Remy from the East Kingdom in the Boston area. I started doing online classes because I was in the middle of like an 8-week intro to Italian rapier class that I was teaching at my local practice. Everything got shut down literally right at week 4, and I didn't want to lose the momentum. And that was back when we just thought, oh, maybe this will just be a few weeks of sitting at home by ourselves kind of thing. Clearly that hasn't been the case. So really after that was done, I decided to renew for another 8 weeks. And now I'm in my third 8 weeks of teaching an intro beginners class. In the middle of that, I decided I wanted to keep people's interest who have gone through the intro classes or who have just have been fencing for a long while, have a lot of the basics down, how I can kind of keep their interest and get them moving. So I kind of did start off a Beyond the Basics class where we kind of look at different aspects of Italian rapier that I don't usually cover in my intro class. And I really try to balance academic learning to like keep people's minds engaged and learning to new material with like the physical aspect of fencing. So like for some people, fencing is their workout. So I want to try to make sure they get moving around and get at least a little bit sweaty and trying to balance those two as best I can.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so I'm moving on to our first question, which is going to be kind of coming off of what all three of you just said. So considering what you set out to do, each of you kind of said what you were trying to accomplish. What were your biggest hurdles and how did you overcome those hurdles? And let's go back to Jeff. Let's start with Jeff on this one.
I guess I'll talk a little bit. I'm sure Justin will probably jump in a lot on this topic. Initially, the hurdle was we're in the middle of teaching something, which is a scheduled, planned element for 16 weeks with partners and with hands-on learning application. And how do we transition that very quickly into, okay, let's keep people engaged. Let's find space for them to set up at home and practice now in a solo environment. And then after we did that and finished the engagement on what was that planned time period, how do we take that, what we learned from that, and start planning a sort of an engaged focal class that is designed to be at home based off of the challenges that everybody's going to have, which is space limitations and technology limitations. Most people can't necessarily sit on a computer and learn and do a class. Like, if you're teaching a class online, you can sit there and take notes, which is what you're supposed to do in an indoor class. But fencing is a physical activity, and if you're sitting in your office at home, you can't get up and practice the footwork you're learning, and you don't have a partner there to attack you in the right time. So how do you structure the environment to allow people to discover these things and create a class that can be taught alone, that people can be focusing on solo drills and still be engaged with that learning opportunity, I guess. So was that the full question, or do you want me to go into what we did? I don't know. Did you ask?
I think that's good for now. I was gonna say let's see what Meredith says about her own thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, so I'm coming in from a different background, right? I had kind of a standard SCA rapier practice that was much more ad hoc, focused on sparring, that kind of thing. Of course, I drilled with people when I was there, but again, some of the same issues of can't have someone attack you. So how do I take that drill and turn it into something they can do at home and explain to that person what aspects of this drill they should be like form, of course. You need to think about your form, making sure your knee is tracking, all of that stuff. But then also, if you were doing this with a partner, what would it look like so that they can have that kind of visual? And then I also kind of took a route where I was like, well, I can't do a lot of the normal things I would do at a practice, but what can I do and where can I go from there? And one of the options I came up with was conditioning more than, say, content. So I can talk about more about that later. But yeah, that's very similar thought process in my head.
Okay, I've got some follow-on questions myself, but let's go into Justin, see what Justin says.
Yeah, to be the broken record, yeah, really taking the, what is a partner game or partner atmosphere that we have, and how can we do it without partners? Some people in my classes have partners that live with them that also fence, so they can actually do the drills and stuff as together in person, which lucky them, they are so much far ahead of everyone else because of that. But otherwise, it's trying to take what's two people's drill and turn into a one-person drill and stuff like that. Or things that are very difficult is explaining how to control somebody's blade if there's not a blade there that's moving around. So it's really for me, I really try to concentrate a lot on the biomechanics, just like good form, good technique and stuff. One of my side gig jobs is personal trainer. So like just having good form and good body structure is very important to me in general. And this is a good atmosphere to really kind of concentrate on what your body can do and figure out what your limitations are and making those adjustments and stuff. So really kind of grinding the XP that no one really wants to do at practice when they have partners is a great time to kind of like just soldier your way through those things. So that, and also looking for creative ways of explaining techniques and stuff when you don't have a partner across from you. Those are the big challenges. Right.
So yeah, I mean, what I've done with a lot of my students is focused on that conditioning, focused on getting your individual lunge sharper and better form, right? But understanding that you're all three still developing, you're all three still learning and working things out. Tell me one thing you did to overcome these problems that you really like or that you're proud of. For instance, Justin, you've got your drill stand, which I think is really fantastic that you can demonstrate against. So tell me one thing, each of you, that you really like that you're proud of. Jeff.
I want reference to this drill stand that you just mentioned because I'm interested. The big thing for me is setting up a space where I was comfortable being able to film, so that I could teach people easier, and having that readily accessible, so it wasn't a chore to set it up, take it down, find a place, go to the park. All of these things, like getting essentially just setting it up in what was my backyard, but transforming that space a little bit. And I've had some help with people that live with me to do that and create an environment that is presentable and I feel very comfortable with. And I think the same thing you're probably going to hear from all of us is we changed our focus, is changing the focus from how competitive am I at fencing to how is my form. What am I doing now to focus on me that's going to be applicable later when we get back into competition fighting? I think all of us are probably going to say something similar. One of the things I've done is the class we set up, which was initially going to be a DUSAC class that was designed to teach provocation and timing and those types of things and how to use these cuts against other cuts, became very focused on how do we form our cuts properly? How do we practice cutting technique and engage in a way that we can think about this very simple thing, but all the complexities of it. This is the time we have to I like Justin's, grind that XP and build those skills that we wouldn't necessarily be building in an environment, even when we're drilling with multiple partners, because there's so many elements coming at us at the same time. It's just taking time to focus on how well am I doing a form. So I think those types of things became really important for us.
Got it. Meredith, any thoughts on top of that?
Yeah. So again, I'm coming from that traditional SDA practice. So one of the challenges for me has been switching gears into more of a formal setting and having to think through what does that look like? How do I do that? Because I haven't been trained that way, maybe in little bits and pieces, but not on a consistent basis. And then being able and confident in telling that to someone else. So that's one thing I think I'm really learning and getting out of this experience.
So kind of pedagogy, you're building your classes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Justin.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it's what I've been really excited about from a teacher perspective is try to think outside the box of different ways of teaching things. If I don't have someone next to me to work with and stuff, how can I teach a little bit more of a complex concept, or even simple things like measure? I create like little graphics using some period manuals and just kind of threw it in Photoshop to kind of show the progression of like your on guard stance to like your step lunge and leaning lunge, and roughly what that distance between the two fences would look like, and stuff like that, and creating some graphics for like to help illustrate tempo and just like try to think of some things outside the box for illustrating some ideas. For blade stuff, from what I'm doing my live practice, I just basically lash up a yardstick to a tripod. So that's my stand-in like sword simulator. And I try to have it so like the inches are facing the camera so people can actually see like how far down the blade I am in case that's important to them in terms of like needed numbers versus just a visual. But also I've been doing a lot of like accessory videos, a little bit more higher production that I'll shoot on the side with my fencing pole, which I think is what David was referring to. I'll post a link in the chat and stuff because it's super great. But been taking stuff that I've taught in classes and just shooting from different angles, and I just got a GoPro so now I can show my students from my own point of view. So things like finding and gaining the blade, I can show them exactly what I'm seeing as a fighter, which I think might be pretty useful, and it's kind of, if nothing else, I think it's super interesting from a teaching and a learning perspective.
I've heard that Duplos come in handy sometimes.
Yeah, and I do like seeing how other people like take different like learning tools. Like David uses Duplos, like the big Legos that kind of show fencer blade actions and stuff. I've used like letter openers to do like, here's the different disengages and like blade angles and all that stuff. So it's really been kind of cool taking other people's classes and seeing what they use to teach different aspects of fencing.
Yep. Okay, no questions on that, so I'll move on. So turning this into turning a frown upside down, you might say. So what are the advantages that you have found in teaching online? Or are there any advantages that you have found that you maybe didn't get in person? And how can you enhance or amplify those even more as you keep teaching classes? Meredith, you want to start?
Yeah. One thing I have noticed is that I have more people interested in what I am doing because I post, every week, this is the plan, from different areas than necessarily like my own barony that I would actually teach at. And I do go to different practices, but the setup is different for this. And seeing those people coming together and really focusing on drilling in ways that they haven't before has really been a benefit and something kind of interesting.
Cool. Justin.
Yeah, same with Meredith saying, just like working with people from all over the place. I have people from like the mid-realm, I have people from like Eldamir, Kaid, like West Kingdom, just like faces that I've like either know, but I only see them at like Penzik once a year, or like I've never met before. I've gotten to like work with and stuff. I've got to take classes with people from other parts of the country, which is really cool. So that's been kind of nice just in terms of like expanding my community and stuff like that. It's been really nice. But also like I use Zoom for when I'm teaching my live classes. So being able to record those classes and upload it to YouTube after and send out the link to people so they can either rewatch it in case there was something that maybe they didn't quite get the first time, or if they missed the class for like who knows what reason, a whole bunch of good reasons, they can go back and watch the video and not feel like they missed anything, and they can watch my entire class all by videos basically on demand, or if they miss a week, they watch it and they come back live the next week and stuff. So that's been, I think, pretty useful as well.
Yeah, the recordings to me are both a blessing and a curse.
Oh, for sure. Like, I don't want to go back and watch any of my recordings. I'll probably be like, no, I could have taught that better.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo both of those. I have people in my Tattershall class from South Carolina, North Carolina, Reno, places and people I've never even met that heard about it. Or Michigan, we had one of our people sell it to their Ren Fair friends in Michigan. They wanted in, so we have theatrical fencers as well as SCA fencers as well as HEMA fencers. So it's being able to bring a broader group of people together, I think is super cool. And seeing everybody come together from all over the country. Also, so I do something a little different. I don't record live classes. I record my classes, edit them, and then do a live chat about the video during the week. So people can ask all of their questions. And I've upgraded my system, so now I can actually do live demonstration during that chat, because before I was sort of like on my webcam, swinging my arm around with a pen. Right. And now I can actually go and demonstrate in front of my space. But what's happening is I'm gaining a pool of material that's going to be accessible to me later on. That is something that I will want to go back to. And if I do want to teach this material again, I will have something super condensed and accessible and ready to go. I won't have to go out and shoot it again, as long as I'm happy with what I'm teaching. Obviously, revamping that and going back to it is also good. And seeing what you're doing and getting real critical feedback about it is also important. But I'll say this too. I've started to see teaching from a lot more sources than just what I'm used to seeing. And I think that's something that our investment online is really super cool right now, is to see, we've got people, sort of non-Masters of Defense out here in Caid that are doing weekly training videos in their living room because they were running a baronial practice and they were teaching drills, and they've got, okay, well, I'm going to teach in my living room and do what I can to help these people at my practice who've been relying on me for, what do I do this week? All right, well, here's your form, here's your exercise, here's your footwork. Let's focus on blade parries, all of these things, and seeing other people who I don't generally get to see teach, and seeing all that material out there and seeing different people come together. The Caid Rapier has like a Discord channel now, and we're doing kind of weekly or even sometimes twice a week, having classes on that, different people from all over the country, whether they're Master Defense or not, getting opportunities to teach and getting their reach out to people. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. So Jeff, I think I've been saying this for 20 years. You don't really learn your material until you have to actually teach it to someone. And I think that, from what you were saying and Meredith is saying, I think this is forcing a lot of people to really think harder about what they know and to try and break it down into ways that they can teach it. So I think in a long run, it's going to be really advantageous for everyone who had to sit down and think through how to teach these classes.
Yeah, and I'll say this, just jumping on that. It's one thing to sort of be, at your practice showing people something, how to fence. It's another, and Marguerite, you can back me up on this. It's another to have to think about, oh my God, what am I going to present in front of people now that they're going to have to take home and practice? And it's not just, oh, here's some advice I do, or I fence you and give you feedback on it. I have to actually think about the pedagogy of what I'm doing. And that's big. A lot of SCA people don't get an opportunity to really do that. And seeing that in practice and having people having to engage with that is super important.
Yep. So this upcoming question is Jeff's question. So I'm going to aim it at Justin first. Jeff was wanting me to talk about, so how classes are run. Can you talk about the pros and cons of the different formats on how to run a class? How do you set up your space? Well, what kind of, do you record it and show it? Do you do it live, et cetera, et cetera? So talk about that.
Yes, so with my class, I'm lucky that I moved to a bigger apartment last summer. If I was at my last apartment, that's basically a closet in Boston, I don't know how I would have been able to do any of this stuff, because I could lunge almost through 2 rooms in my last place, which is that tiny. So right now we have just a craft room. It's just whatever we use it for that I set up for my classes. And I got my, I got my computer basically on a stand and stuff, and I'll put my webcam up on top, and that is sitting on top of an ironing board a little precariously, so I can get the right height and angle for people to see my entire body doing stuff. But I'll start off with a warm-up, just a general walk, get the muscles moving, because a lot of us work at a desk all day, so maybe even more so now, with a lot of people working from home, to kind of get people moving. Then I would go into some lunge drills, depending on what class it is. It's either very simple or more complex for more advanced students. Again, I want to get people some exercise and get the body kind of a little sweaty and stuff. Then we'll jump into whatever the new material is, which is, again, it's going to vary from class to class. I'll kind of demonstrate it from a few different angles, and then I try to find ways to turn it into a solo drill. How do you turn finding and gaining the blade when you don't have a partner to work against as a solo drill can be an interesting challenge from a teacher's perspective. And then depending at this time at the end, we might do another circuit training of lunges or whatever we just learned and stuff like that. The upsides to it is that I get live questions I can kind of answer right away, and I can kind of show different angles real time for people. The downside is it's not as polished when I upload it and stuff. The quality isn't going to look as good as my pre-made stuff that I have on my YouTube channel and stuff, and the angle's a lot more limiting.
Yep. Okay.
Just can I follow up on that? Just because one of the key cruxes is taking that two-partner drill and making it into a solo drill. So what do you find is sort of the key to doing that?
Really, it's kind of taking like what the core concept of whatever the technique is. So like I'm trying to teach someone a contra tempo drill. Like some people are very good at visualizing an imaginary fighter attacking them so they can do it in time. Other people, they just cannot do that for whatever reason. It's its own skill set, and it's much easier to do if you already know the technique than if it's like learning brand new. So that for those people, I really just concentrate on making sure that they have the blade, all like the blade angle, as well as they can imagine where if they don't have a simulator in front of them, and just worry about turning the hand over and lunging in good order and stuff. So I really kind of break it down from like a tactical concept into more mechanical, and just try to show them piece by piece in as many different small steps as I have to, how they can get there. And just really, I try to really stress to them, concentrate more on the form and mechanics, and like all the tactical stuff, we can work on that while we're back in person and stuff. Really just get the mechanics down, make sure you're in good form, learning your body, making sure that you're not injuring yourself, but you know what your limits are, and you're doing everything as correctly as you can based on how you're built. Yeah,
it's kind of my belief that the thing that's going to need to be rebuilt from almost all of us is tempo. We're going to have to get back into tempo with opponents, right? Meredith, format, what do you think?
Right. So I don't record mine, but I do list out kind of the plan for the day. Generally, my practices have two parts. The conditioning part goes first, and that is a small, what I call a small workout. So I make them do squats and lunges, like exercise lunges, and I make them do push-ups. And the big challenge with that is keeping things accessible. It's much harder. It's much easier to make something harder than it is easier if you're new to working out. I'm not a personal trainer like Remy. However, I have been going to a personal trainer for years and have taken a lot of those lessons, and Boomy has actually been joining and helping when questions come up, and he is a personal trainer because, again, form is so important, right? And so I try and keep things accessible, but still slightly challenging for that, and encourage people to like increase as they feel is necessary. And then the next part is just drills. And so I come up with a set of drills for the month, and we're going to do those every week for 4 weeks. And then I change the number of the drills for the next 4 weeks. I kind of came up with that because just with my personal schedule, I can't always come up with a lot of new content every week. And this makes it so that they still get drills and they still change and people still want to come back, but it's not like I'm not going to not come up with something interesting one week, right? And so that has been working. The main issue I've kind of run into is, so if I'm lunging to be like the example, I usually do it this way, and like turning to the camera is very difficult, is what I learned. And also, if I did these in person, I would spend time on each person to watch their form. And I think it's much, much difficult, right? Like I have to get up like this to the camera to do that. So it's very difficult. So I'm trying some new things to help work with that. But yeah, so that's probably also why I don't record it, is because I don't, because you can just follow the list that I post every week, right? So we're trying new things with that. Oh, and ironically, the drill Remy just mentioned is the drill for this month. So, but yeah.
Yeah, so unless there's anything to add on this, yeah. I've got this leads me directly into the next question. The next question I had lined up was, how do you handle individual attention? You've mentioned it. I've watched Remy as he's stepped in front of the camera and watched people. But this also goes to another question. So let me do a follow-up question that someone just asked. Do instructors feel that they're able to teach and coach on more complex actions and offer good feedback? So I think these two are kind of intertwined. So think about those two and give me an answer. Do you feel like you can teach kind of complex actions, and how do you handle individual attention? Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, so there's a couple elements to this. So give me a little bit of time here. I think one is, one of the ways I've been handling personal feedback is I've set up the engagement to the class through Google Classroom. And what that allows me to do is encourage my students to video themselves on their phone or whatever they can, and upload videos of them practicing to me in their own time. That's the big key I found, is that I couldn't teach live and give feedback at the same time because nobody could watch me from their computer and do the actions simultaneously because they're in their office and they didn't have any space. So, so the idea was, all right, I'll shoot a video and then you shoot a video, and I'll give you feedback based off of your video, and you can look at my video and self-analyze. And I think the combination of those helps dramatically, especially when you're dealing with basic form and some fundamental technique. And then you get into, am I qualified to watch video of people and analyze what's going on? And that's a real tricky question, and one of that we kind of all have to answer for ourselves in our own way, because a lot of us aren't trained to actually observe from the outside, analyze, process, and critique. A lot of us fight from feel, or we fight from a tactical sense of what we're doing, and don't really get that from watching from the outside. I think I'm lucky in that I've been trained to do that for the last 2 decades by my teacher. And part of my learning before COVID was watching a fight from the outside, analyzing it, processing, and instructing on it, as well as doing that from the inside. So I spent a lot of years honing that skill that I don't necessarily know, and I can't tell you if you have it or you don't. I could help you with it if you're somebody who wants that. But it takes time. There's a great example, is a knight, formerly a Kaid, now in Drakenwald, who would do heavy weapons combat and do videos, video analysis of heavy weapons combat. There's a couple of knights actually in Kaid that have been getting into coaching via video training. And they're very good at looking at a video of a fight and being able to slow it down and analyze it and process it, and give feedback on it and tell you exactly what's happening, even though the fighters themselves didn't know what was happening in that time. And that's a different skill than being a good fighter or being a good teacher. Being able to watch fighting and process it is a whole different skill. It takes time and practice to actually develop that.
Cool.
So,
excuse me.
On the first point of that, though, being a teacher and being in a classroom management position, having a rubric of being able to watch your students and then say, yes, that's good, versus no, that's not what I'm teaching you, obviously is a goal of any teacher. So you're going to need that sort of one way or the other, no matter what you're doing. So, so it's good for any teacher to be processing on that factor, and that's probably a key to any class that you're going to be teaching. So,
truth. Marguerite, what do you think?
Many similar things. I've been trying to promote people taking videos similarly, sending them to me. When I watch them, I do focus mostly on the biomechanics of something, of what I expect this to look like. Of course, there's some things you just can't tell over video and have to fix that when we get back, right? The other thing is, right, because I take that kind of exercise approach, I also make them do stretches. And when we're doing stretches, I ask people how they're feeling, where they're getting sore, what parts of their arms are giving out, that kind of thing. And I try and work that into the next set of exercises, if that makes sense.
Yep. Have you found that you're able to get across complex actions, or are you still working up to that?
So the people who have been showing up, I think, are people that were already prepped to really do complex actions, if that makes sense. I haven't had any really new people that I had to explain how to find a blade or how to gain a blade with. Everyone kind of already knew that. Thus, I get away with it a little bit more, but so I'm still experimenting with that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go to Justin, and then I have a couple thoughts from some of my own online classes. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's really hard to give, kind of like what Jeff and Marguerite were saying, it's really hard to give live feedback in the moment when people's angles are all weird, like just looking at my screen, everyone's got different angles, and this is not very much different than what I would see in my classes. Some people I only see like from like their upper chest to their head. Some people I might only see like their shoulder because everyone's working in different spaces. It's really hard to give individual feedback. Even if I could see everyone's entire body, I would be a little worried about giving individual feedback in a group setting. Like if I'm in a classroom with people, I can go up to David and be like, hey, David, your shoulder's a little bit low, and it's not calling you out in front of the entire class. It's a little bit harder to do that on Zoom unless you have, or like Discord, unless you break people up into smaller little side chats, which I've seen some classes do pretty successfully, is like just little breakout rooms to do like individual, like one-on-one online group, one-on-one online drills and stuff. But if I'm just like, if I have a class of like 20 people, I don't want to call out one individual person. So I might just make a vague note of like, hey, just remember to keep your arm at shoulder height and don't let it drift down when you're leaning forward because that exposes your head, and like maybe one person's just doing that wrong, so now they fix it, or maybe multiple people are doing it wrong and they all kind of fix it. But I try to like make sure I don't call anyone out so they don't feel uncomfortable. Some people don't mind, other people do, so I try to keep that in the back of my head anyways. Fair.
That's just good teaching, really. I mean,
yeah, but it's something like, I never really would have thought about until online class, because that's not something it would really cross my mind in person, because I'm not just going to call out from across the room. I would just go up to the person and stuff, but like there is no going up to the person when it's in a Zoom meeting unless you have the breakout room. It is literally
you.
Yeah, so it's something that you kind of need to look at those social aspects of teaching a little bit differently.
Yeah. As Marguerite knows, whenever I'm teaching, especially when we're talking about the form, I'm all over the place. I'll squat in front of all my fencers, and I'll stand up, and I'll get beside them, I'll get behind them. So yeah, it's nearly impossible to teach the way I like to teach when we're online.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was going to getting at the advanced stuff, I taught an advanced class a couple of weeks ago, and what I felt like I had to do was try and filter for people who I felt were on the level that they could comprehend the stuff, because I wouldn't be able to go back and help them get to that point. So what I basically said is, if you have a good familiarity with the plates of Capoferro or Gigante, then you should be able to take this class. Even then, it was more of a lecture. I mean, I think I tried to demonstrate a few things, but it was much more of a lecture, take notes, and then come and talk to me later one-on-one if you have some questions about your notes. But that was the best way I could think to teach an advanced tactics class. I couldn't think of how to do it on camera, in action. Cool. Here's a big question. What would you guys do differently next time? Or I'll amend that with, since you're all still kind of going, what are you looking at changing? What are you going to try and set up in your next class or in your next set of classes differently? Justin, let's keep with you right now.
Sure. So I'm always just trying to think of new ways of explaining or teaching a concept. Like I try to either create other videos I have in my YouTube that I can send as follow-up teaching aids for students, or try to think of some kind of new graphical way of demonstrating a particular concept or technique, or I'm constantly trying to think of outside the box or different just weird ways of teaching things to maybe get complex ideas across. Stuff like finding and getting the blade is just very difficult to learn and teach when there's not an actual blade to work against. And sure, we can stick a broom handle and extra sword into a bookcase and stuff, and that helps. But it only can get you so far. So I find just trying to keep asking myself, hey, how else can I teach this concept? Can I try a different angle? Can I use a different metaphor? Sometimes I get another metaphor from a student. I was teaching a passing step, now, and we keep like the lead hips pointed forward. And the student mentioned that it's very much like crossovers and like figure skating. I'm like, awesome! I have a new way of explaining this body mechanics that like might help someone else down the line and stuff. So it's just a lot of just review and try to make it better next time as best I can.
Jeff? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that. Good thing too, because the dogs were just barking. I think obviously we're always looking for new ways of presenting stuff. I think as far as like online goes, it's kind of new ways of engaging with people digitally. One of the things I just did recently was upgrading my camera that I had been using just for video and then editing and then presenting videos. I upgraded the system that allows me now to use it as a webcam, so I can get a higher resolution, at least output when I'm in a video call. And kind of what it allows me to do is have a wider angle and feel more comfortable with what I'm presenting. And maybe even, adding another camera or something like that. So right now, we've been doing some live classes where I'll set up the computer at an angle to where the camera is, and then I can talk to people on the computer and then step back and go to the big camera and do demonstrations in the bigger space, and then come back and sit down and have the face-to-face conversation with people on the computer. So I'll have multiple me's running at the same time so people can have multiple angles. And I think engaging in different ways digitally is kind of the next step for what I'm doing. I tried one day to sort of record and live stream the recording at the same time. But it was basically behind the scenes because I was doing multiple takes of different things so that I could then edit it and present it. So, those are different ways you can engage with people. Motivation being a key factor for a lot of people right now because they can't go to practice and actually fight with people is really key. Is trying to find ways of engaging with people that make them want to keep coming back without having that tangible result of, and then I'm going to go hit somebody on Tuesday, So, right. How do we keep motivated in this time? And I think that's kind of key for how we present our instruction and what we're doing to help people engage in that fashion.
Yeah, let me jump in there and I'll bring Meredith into it. One of the small things I think that I have learned, and I think you have also learned, Jeff, instructors who want to do this online, you've got to get some kind of a mic that follows you around. So for me, for instance, I've got this set of headphones that has the mic built into it. So when I am, they're Bluetooth headphones. So when I'm walking around, you don't lose my voice. I don't sound like I'm in a big hollow room, right? So that was one of the small things that when I taught my first class, every time I'd kind of walk away from the computer, everyone's going, "What? What are you saying?" So having some kind of a mic on your body while you're demonstrating and while you're walking around your space is a huge deal for those of you who are going to start your classes sometime. And another thing that one of my students just asked me to try and work out with her is goals. Trying to help come out with goals, because we no longer have the free fighting where we can test ourselves against someone or we can set a goal and see if we can meet it. So helping your students come up with something that is an improvement, that shows an improvement and you can keep moving on from, is another thing that I think we as online instructors need to think much more clearly about than we have before. Meredith, what do you think? What will you do differently?
Yeah, many of the same thoughts. I am also looking at upgrading my space too. And the other one with the motivation is, especially because I'm doing something that's more grinding the XP oriented, is coming up with things that make people want to come back, right? And so I keep joking that I'm going to play Rocky music one day, and those kinds of trying to build that community engagement on that Zoom call, right? It's pretty difficult, but I think that for what I'm doing, having the time where we're stretching and kind of just chit-chatting and stuff helps people want to come back for social reasons in addition to the exercise and the drills itself.
Yeah, and Sean Ellis just mentioned, along with the mic, having someone else who's kind of a co-teacher who can answer chats and can help with technical stuff is also really helpful. I don't know anyone who's been able to do that right now, but that would be well. So okay, no, in one of my online classes, I did. Do I? You did?
I've got Wendy's posting from Wendy's, one of the people. She's the person who's helped me mostly set up my space, and she helps me teach my classes as well. And on the technology side, she's trying to post a photo of our space right here that she just took while I'm setting up here. So there's my class assistant. So it's really helpful, especially if you're managing multiple computers or you have that chat going. Having somebody like you're the moderator, you get to watch the chat while the rest of us talk. When you're teaching, having somebody to do that can be really key. And even if they're not in the same space, they can be in a different area, a different room as you, different house as you, as long as they're kind of managing, watching the chat. I did that with Ryan Shapiro, who's also one of our instructors at Tattershall. Gary Chelak's also doing that when we do group chats with our group.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I had Monica Gaudio did that for me, and I found it really helpful for her to just monitor the questions as they came up and to throw them out there. Absolutely. Did I miss anyone? No, I think I hit all of you for that question. So last two questions. One is one of mine. Another one is Elizabeth Underhill asked it a little bit earlier, and I'll get to that one. Mine is, what should you prepare your students with? How do you set their expectations and help them get the most out of your class? So since each of you is kind of slightly doing something different, I might expect different answers, but maybe not. So tell me, start with Marguerite.
Okay.
What do you do to prepare your students to come to class and to get the most out of it?
Right. The big thing with my format is the exercise portion, and if they need any weights or anything like that, everyone has different things at home. So I try and make things body weight oriented as I can. It's very difficult with arm strength, however, especially if you need it to be lighter. So I try and post common objects that they have around the house that they could use instead, and make sure that it's accessible in that way. And then I also try and give recommendations for the space. So if I'm doing something that's like a step and then a lunge or 2 lunges, letting them know ahead of time so that they can prep their area accordingly.
Yep. Okay. Justin, what do you do to prepare your students?
Yeah, so I use Facebook event pages a lot as kind of my central hub for everything. So I try to really lay out in the descriptions exactly what they should expect. If it's the intro class that's in 8 weeks, what they'll probably learn and what the goals are. If it's my rotated monthly theme, what the theme is for that month and stuff. So they have an idea of what they're kind of getting themselves into. I also when I'm posting the link for the stream for that day, I usually will try to write up really quickly what we're covering that day. We're doing voids, we're going to look at giratas, so we're going to look at the concept of string and stuff like that. So people have an idea of what we'll be covering ahead of time and stuff. So I try to, kind of like Marguerite says, let people know ahead of time if there's anything they're going to need. If we're looking at string and finding the blade, I try to tell people, hey, if you can set up an extra sword someplace in the wall, or have someone in the household just for you for a few minutes, awesome. If not, we'll make do. It's fine.
Cool. Okay, so kind of the same answer that Marguerite just had. Tell them what equipment they need, tell them how much space they need, and continue on.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think you might have another answer or two as well.
I mean, I think it's very similar. It's setting up expectations, right? Is communicating ahead of time what they're going to need, what you're going to want. Like for us, when I engaged with the 16-week class, it was, okay, you're going to want a space where you can swing a stick around, right? What the basic expectations for what you're using is anything that, for this class was anything you can hold in your hand. It could be a baton to an actual dussac to a messer, somebody in my class using a cutlass, it doesn't really matter. It could be a stick, but you're going to need space to swing it around, and you're going to want something to video yourself with, and that's essentially the fundamental expectations of what the class is. And then also setting up expectations of when are we going to get feedback, You know, what type of feedback are we expecting, and what are we expecting out of this class? And I think just being clear on those goals, saying, look, this is a video class. I'm not going to be there to hold your hand through it. You're going to have to motivate yourself to do these things. And I'll be there for when you do that, and saying and giving them all of the tools to do that. I think the only other thing I'd add in is, and this is actually, it's very similar to, is especially with the very specific drills, when I was posting videos, I'd also post the description in the drill of how to do it. So they had the text as well as the visual. I think having multiple access points is very good for people to set those expectations for them, and help them ground what they're doing going forward. So it's you know, like I said, it's really about preparing them, is about managing expectations and saying, this is what we're going to do, and then following through on those expectations. So.
Right. And so my thought about what yours might do differently than Marguerite's and Justin's is, when you send them to do video homework, I would expect that you would lay out pretty clearly what you're expecting to see from them, what you're wanting them to get across to you. So that's expectations, like you just said, but that would be an extra step I'd have to think through, is what do I want you to demonstrate in this video that you're going to send back to me?
Right, but it's basically like setting up any drill. I would say, you know, you say, okay, this is the drill I'm expecting to see from this class, right? We're going to cut diagonals, right? Whatever it is, right? We're going to cut Zornhouse. Here's how you throw a Zornhouse. Here's the stepping actions I want you to use with it. Here's the guards I want you to use with it. Here's a demonstration of me doing what I expect you to see from you. And then here's the textual written portion of that, so you can have a visual representation, both in video and in text, and you can put those together. And then I think having feedback sessions, so that's why we incorporate also a video chat when post video, right? And say, okay, here's the video, and then I'll also have a face-to-face with people so they can ask questions, get clarifications, walk through where they're having problems. Oh, my elbow hurts when I do that. Okay, well, let's talk about what you're doing with your elbow. You know, those types of things. So I think those are important teaching tools. So, you know, setting up those expectations in that way is pretty important. Cool.
Okay, I'm going to respond to a question that popped up just a second ago, and then he's got another one added on that I want to ask. Someone asks, how do you handle brand new people who don't have equipment, or how do you recommend what they use? And I think the answers that were given in the chat are pretty much what we'd all say, which is use a broom handle, use a toy sword. You know, since we're not actually playing sword against sword and we're walking through forms, you're a lot freer to say, even go without a sword if you need to. You know, if we're just teaching lunge, you know, point at the wall. So for me, I think the equipment thing is really minimized with online. We don't have to worry as much about the equipment. And we can get to that once we get back into in-face fencing. Really quickly, do any of you three have any disagreements with that? Do you do something different?
I'll just add in, I don't know where this fits in the questionnaire, but this is kind of a good point, and we've talked about this when we had new people with the rapier and dagger who were using loaner gear in our club, and all of a sudden they're at home and they don't have access to loaner gear. We said, go to Home Depot, grab a dowel, grab a short dowel and a long dowel, and then you practice with those actions. Fundamentally, this, and like I said, maybe this goes in the wrap up, but whatever. Fundamentally, we all got into this hobby because when we were 9 years old, let's say, we picked up a stick and swung it around like a sword, right? I mean, that's really what we're doing here, and all we're doing is refining that. So we can go back to picking up sticks and swinging them around like swords, because that's really what we're after in the grand scheme of things.
Yep. Anything else? Anyone else? All right. Elizabeth Underhill asked a while back, what will people take back from this experience when we can fence in person again? And I've got one quick answer I want to throw on top of that, and then see what you three think about it. I view fencing in my teaching, I view three fundamentals. One fundamental is measure, one is tempo, and one is the use of the blade work, form, whatever you want to call it. I feel we can do about 1.5 of those 3 fundamentals when we're solo drilling. We can do measure. You can figure out ways of testing your measure, of drilling it into your body a lot better. And we can do about half of blade work. You can learn how to you can learn your hand, you can learn kind of what stringering does, you can learn your form a bit. But the half you can't do is whenever you're opposing another blade, whenever you're trying to feel what stringering is like, etc. And then I mentioned earlier, I think tempo is just going to go away for a while because you can't play against someone when you're doing solo drilling. Do any of you 3 have any different thoughts on that? What is a person going to take away from this experience? Marguerite?
I guess I interpret that a little differently. So
Okay.
what I've taken away is that for just like the dedicated drill time is not something people in this area necessarily get at practice. In their practice, because again, it's the SCA, and that this may be even post-pandemic an effective way to get people that time doing drills at home. So that in my major takeaway is that maybe this is something to just straight up continue moving forward. And then for the mechanics part of it, I don't think I have anything I can think of in addition to your answer. Shockingly, I think about it in very similar terms. And as David explained, and yeah, it's really the mechanics that we can focus on right now. So I'm hoping that the people coming to my practice and coming to other people's practices come out of this with just the better fundamentals. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Justin?
Yeah, so for me personally, I've gotten so many extra like teaching hours, so I feel much more comfortable teaching, which is for me, which is really nice. And I've been able to get like, at least, if nothing else, a common language and framework down for a bunch of people that are in my kingdom and stuff. So when I can hang out with them again, I don't need to like, we have the same language. If I say find the blade, they know what I'm talking about. I don't need to like redefine that or show them and stuff. We can just kind of make some tweaks and kind of move on depending on where we're going. So just kind of like being able to build that framework with a bunch of people throughout the kingdom has been super nice. I also like when you're saying like there's only so much we can do in terms of learning and teaching and stuff. So like a lot of mechanics, like measure, some blade mechanics. I did try teaching tempo this past week, and it's doable, but it's not high quality because it's not high quality. So like I tell them like, all right, I'm going to do this, and that's your cue to hit me. And like as I step forward, can the person even look at their camera or like their screen while I'm doing that? Can they even see me? So like I really like, even when I'm teaching tempo and doing tempo drills online, I'm really trying to get people to really just concentrate on the mechanics. Make sure you do the mechanical aspect of everything correctly. And if you're not in perfect tempo, whatever, it's the internet, I'm not actually going to hit you. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that isn't going to work super well. So it's kind of like even there, it's like set an expectation so people don't get super frustrated. But yeah, I'm hoping that people just kind of like feel like their mechanics are much better and they understand how their body moves and how to adapt period techniques for how their body is structured and built and stuff. Because we're not all built like the folks in Fabris and Caprofaro, so we need to kind of learn how to adapt all that stuff.
Yep. Fair. Hey, Jeff, what do you think?
I'm going to 100% agree with both Margaret and Justin on this one, that both the points are excellent. I think revamping the way people approach their practice. I'm huge into solo drilling. I have been for decades. And getting other people to solo drill and practice form is nigh impossible sometimes. And again, I think coming back to it in sort of an appreciation of finding spaces to get rid of the stigma that we have at practice of losing and failure, and finding ways of encouraging people to practice in a failure-free environment where they can just focus on what they're doing and re-engage with the sword in that same love that we first picked the sword up, and just do a thing. Just do a thing and practice that for a while and refine it, and then bring it to where you're going to be putting it against somebody. I think is super encouraging from a lot of the engagement that we're getting, because we're seeing people start to process that in a way that they didn't when they just went to practice every week and fought and then didn't do anything else. I'll say this for all you Italiophiles. You know what you can teach in solo drilling? Provoking. So maybe we'll get some more German out of this start thinking in terms of German actions. Always thinking in terms of tempo. But no, like, the mechanics of provoking is pretty easy actually to get people's brains into, as opposed to necessarily trying to teach the complexities of tempo. And certainly you're not teaching tacto in a solo environment. You just can't. I don't know. I think I definitely plan on already pushing and continuing online courses and online instruction post getting back together. And I'm hoping to see people put that value on it that they didn't before, that necessarily they didn't come to classes. They just went to practice and they just fought.
Right.
And, there's a lot you can learn and do and really refine when you're not just fighting at practice.
So I totally agree with you, Jeff. I'll throw in there, provoking without tempo means you're just telling them where to hit you. That's all there is to that.
Yeah, I think Meyer looks at. Oh wait, am I still on? Yeah, I think Meyer looks at it in a slightly different way. Is all I'm saying.
Okay. All right, so we're going over by about 5 minutes. Someone asked a great question. I want to throw in there before closing thoughts. Can you three maybe walk through what a typical class from prep to delivery looks like? Just kind of give a few sentences on helping someone to think through getting their class going. A real world example. Let's start. We got Jeff on. Let's start with Jeff.
I'm going to do two versions of this because I want to help people. Realistically, the most simple version of this is for me, because I fundamentally right now, until somebody really convinces me otherwise, I believe in video recording and editing. But you can do this at home with your phone and with a very basic editor, iMovie or whatever, and you can record yourself giving instruction to people, doing the demonstrations, put together little transitions between your sections, and post it on YouTube all for free, and engage with people with a video, and then ask people to either send you video feedback or send you videos of them and give them feedback, or just talk about it. You can go on Discord or Google Chat or any of these elements and just have conversations with people about their attempts to do what you're trying to do. And that's a great way to get started. For me, I make things super complicated. So I set up a 16-week curriculum and have gone through kind of my expectations of what I'm going to do each week. And then on the weekends, I'll set up 2 cameras and I'll shoot a section of me talking about the instruction and going through the instruction. And then I turn on both cameras and I do the drills and I edit those together into something that's about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the length of exercise that I'm trying to incorporate. I try to hit about a 15-minute mark because I think people's attention spans, especially for online video, are about 15 minutes max. And that's asking a lot of people who are really dedicated. I have a Google Classroom set up, so I post that in the Google Classroom. Everybody who's into the classroom will get the announcement. This is your assignment for the week. And then on Thursdays, we have a video chat through Google Meet where we talk about it, and I can provide feedback for people. I was initially doing this just in my home, in my office, and then I set up a streaming environment in my practice space so that I can demonstrate a little bit better. And we talk about where they're having issues or if they have questions, oh, my elbow hurts. Okay, rest, right. Here's advice for how to turn that hand a little bit better. And we can hit all of those points. And then people on their weekend videotape them during their practice and submit it through the Google Classroom for assignment. That allows me to go through and look at everybody's video and provide them private comments back to them on their feedback. And that's generally the way that I've found works best for what I consider to be a full-on classroom environment, an online classroom environment, to provide both the feedback and the input from all the different angles where they get the text and the video and a chat and all of those different things. So fundamentally, that's my ideal. But, David, we've worked on videos together where it's just shoot on your phone, throw some transitions on it, put it up online and let people watch it. And hopefully they feed back to you through either text chat or comments or whatever. And those are all different ways that we can engage with people. A very simple way and kind of a more complicated way. So.
Yeah, and I'll add, even with that last one, even when I'm shooting on my phone and sending it to Jeff to edit, police cars. I wish I had used my microphone at that time because I was yelling at the phone. So I'll say that if you guys choose to just use your phones, which is perfectly fine, try to find some way to have a mic on you, because the further you get from that phone, the more you've got wind interference and you've got car interference and you've got dogs barking and whatever else. So that's just my little point. Go ahead.
I started the same way. I started with a point and shoot camera shooting my video, and I would have wind and everything. And I found one thing Ryan had done when he was doing that with his phone is he found a little lav mic that could plug into his iPhone, right? And so there's a lot of options online for very inexpensive where you can get a little lavalier mic or one of the mics like what David has to help that will plug into your phone. There's a lot of good options out there.
Yep, so that would be my input to that. Marguerite, so how about you? Walk us through what your planning and implementation looks like.
Right. So again, I kind of have a format that I change every 4 weeks. And so let's say at the beginning of that cycle, I sit down and think about kind of, at the beginning, I started with really simple. We're going to do, I think it was 10 lunges in guard, 4 through 1, right? 3 times. So you have 120 drills. That's accessible. People can do that. And then from there, I got harder from that, right? And so yeah, 3 sets of 40 is how it works out. But so I made that Facebook kind of event like Remy mentioned and posted out the list of expected activities, try and advertise that around. Then in the beginning, what I did was I started my Zoom and I took the computer and went around the house until I found a place where you could see me and it wasn't what I ran into was the lighting, right? Is because the lighting in your house is set up for you to read a book in a corner, not to do lunges. So I actually found there's a place where if I shut the door, it's a white background, and if I wear darker colored clothing, you can see it really well. It's a high contrast. And then from there, just making sure I pronounce slowly, well, and projecting at that computer. And I did order a mic. It'll be here one day. But and then again, using trying to get the angle right, Justin mentioned earlier. So I think I found a really high-backed chair that I hang the computer off of, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So that's a really good set of points. My first video I shot when we first went under quarantine, or whatever you want to call this, I had on black sweats and a dark shirt. And I had a student tell me that my black gloves, my black sweats all blended together and you couldn't see what I was doing. So I immediately bought a gray pair of workout pants, and I've been using those ever since. Those are my brown gloves. So yeah, something to think about when you're setting up your own video shoots is the lighting and what you're wearing. Is your sword going to disappear into the background? Do you have a bright point on that your students can see that point floating around? Those types of things are another big deal to take into account, because otherwise, if you're wearing, for instance, Plastic Ninja HEMA gear and you're in a dark room, no one's going to see a damn thing that's going on. So keep those things in mind as well when you're walking through what you need to do a successful class. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, just to kind of, before I forget, hop on the whole clothing thing. This is something that I've actually given a lot of thought of before teaching and stuff. So I'll make sure my pants and shirt are different colors, so you can see where my torso is versus where my legs are. I roll my pants up to my knee and have long socks that's a different color, so you can see where my joints and stuff are. I make sure my pants aren't very baggy. If you wear super baggy pants, no one's going to tell if your leg is bent or if it's straight. It can be very difficult and stuff. You don't need to wear skin tight clothing and stuff, but people need to be able to see where your joints and stuff are.
Right.
So a mix of how the fabric hangs on you and the colors can be a big help for that in terms of visuals and stuff. for my actual like prep and stuff, I try to come up with like with any kind of class, if I was doing this person, I come up with what I want my curriculum to be. So even if it's my monthly theme, this month I'm talking about the defensive fighter. So like I kind of think, what do I want to cover the entire month? What are my main objectives or techniques and mechanics and tactics I want to talk about? How can I group these? And how can I break those down into each week? And then from each week, how do I want to break that up into smaller pieces for the class and stuff? So it's just like any other class, you have your big ideas and you just start funneling it down until you get to your actual class. I keep in my notes, I have my little outline on my notepad just so I don't forget and stuff, especially if it's a topic that I'm new to teaching. Like I do it less with my intro class because it's like my third, fourth time going through it. I feel pretty comfortable about just kind of doing that on the fly. But if it's something new, I want more details, especially if I'm doing any kind of virtual drill. I want to remind myself how that's going to work. For the actual class, we set like warm up. We do our like shoulder rolls, twists, get the body warmed up, bunch of lunges to get the heart elevated. Then we get into the actual class and stuff. The next day I'll upload the video to YouTube and send out the link. I also create Google form quizzes that kind of like that people can, it's completely optional, but lets people kind of quiz and test their retention of the terminology and like the stuff that we went over from an academic level. Anyways, and there'll be like photos and videos and stuff on there as well. And then on to the next class after.
Got it. Cool. All right. I guess closing thoughts. I was going to say one more question I had is, do you guys find the online classes move slower than they do in person, or do they move faster to you, or what do you think? But just a quick answer on that, and then we'll move to closing thoughts.
I think it moves just as fast because I basically stripped out all the partner drills. So like what normally is an hour and a half class is now an hour class because I've ripped out all the like partner stuff. All
the demonstration stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like.
Sorry, I feel like it's longer because I'm just talking so much. Because normally I don't talk for very long and then I make them drill. But I'm just talking, right?
Jeff?
So I feel like I cover less in a class per se. Like one of the things I've really tried to do is scale back what I'm trying to teach. Because again, I'm trying to keep the instruction down to like 10 minutes with like 5 minutes of demonstration. And, I'm sending people home, find time in your week to practice this stuff. And I feel like that's kind of like keeping it simple is kind of the key is tone. For me, it's been tone down what you're asking people to do, focus on doing that well and doing that simply and then carrying that through so that it takes a lot longer to kind of do the stuff, the same amount of stuff we might do in 6-7 weeks, we're doing in like 16 weeks because it takes that amount of time to do.
Yeah. Okay.
When you're at home.
Yeah. Anyway, my thought would be also to review each time, to review what you did last time and go on to the next thing, and then review again and go on to the next thing. But I'm not sure that would take any more or less time because, like Remy points out, you're not doing the pair drills, so you've got that time to put in there. All right. Well,
with the way my format works is that because people are processing what they just submitted and getting feedback on it, and also looking ahead to what they're going to be doing essentially that week when we have a face-to-face conversation, we end up doing both. We end up talking about the last week and then talking about what they're going to do and then reviewing what they did and then talking about what they're going to do. So I think that's a very valid point. And working that into how if you have a long series of instruction, always coming back to what you talked about already is pretty important.
Right. And Ben Homer says, would there be benefit to breaking lessons down even further, single skill installments? I think, Ben, that's kind of what I'm going to be aiming at when I'm doing my next probably 12-week rapier class is very much, here is one thing I want you to take home, and then the next time we'll review it and add one thing on top of it. So basically incrementally building into a more complex skill set. So yeah, that's how I intend to do it.
There have been people who've, there was a while ago, I remember, I think Master Mateo was trying to do 5-minute videos like on YouTube or Facebook or something that's like, here's a 5-minute lesson. And I know South Coast Swords is doing something similar where they've broken down cutting mechanics into very short videos of tight instruction of just this one. We're just going to talk about the hand today or something like that. And a lot of those series can be either they can be broad. If you think of like a TV show, it can be sort of a serial of things that don't really connect, or they can be a series of very small actions that you binge watch and go through, like the Rob Rutherford videos on Meyer, different approaches.
Yeah. So I guess, approach it different ways and approach it how you want to, Ben, and let us know how it goes. Anyway, closing thoughts. We're 15 minutes over right now, so let's go ahead, and if there's anything else the three of you think you want to add into this, helping people out or just any of the lessons that you learned or whatever. Let's start with Justin.
Oh man. I think one of the things is like, if you're teaching this, like, so one thing that I definitely suffer for is sometimes I feel like an imposter. So I definitely feel like imposter syndrome when I'm teaching. I'm saying this as a Master Defense in the East Kingdom and the SCA and stuff. I still, like, when I'm teaching, like, David popped into my class and I started having a small little anxiety attack. Here's someone else who's a very good instructor, like, now watching my class, I'm like, shit, what if I say the wrong thing or teach it differently? So, like, but, like, that's mostly, like, in my head kind of stuff. But one way that I help myself get through that anyways is I try to be very upfront with what my skill level is and what my knowledge level is. And I tell my students, like, hey, if you have a question, I'll be super honest with you if I don't know how to answer it, and I'll try to hunt down the answer for someplace else. That's how I approach, like, anything that I'm teaching or, like, my personal training. If someone's like, hey, this feels weird, do you know why? If I don't know the answer why, I'm not just going to make it up. I'm going to tell them I don't know. Let's just put that to the side for now, and I'll ask people who have been doing this longer or have different experiences to try to get their ideas and stuff. So I really try to be super upfront with where I am in my own journey of learning and teaching and stuff. So people have some clear expectations, and it makes me more comfortable when I'm teaching.
Excellent. Jeff.
Yeah, I think that's super important no matter where and when you're teaching, whatever you're doing. I'd say also, this is an extraordinary time, and we're doing, in many ways, extraordinary things. We're doing outside of the norms. We're evolving quite rapidly. So be forgiving. Be forgiving of yourself as a teacher, whoever you are. If you're out there, if you're going to put yourself out online, one, you're going to get people who don't think you're right. They're going to come at you and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, maybe they're right and maybe they're wrong. And it's up to you to figure that out. But don't take them personally, and try not to get upset at people, because everybody's going to have doubters. You're doing something. If you're teaching online, you're doing something, and that's important. So have compassion with yourself. You don't have to have the best professional video equipment. You can be shooting on your phone. Maybe you don't even have a mic. Who cares? You're trying. And be compassionate with your students. They're trying. They're at home. You know, I got one of my guys has a cardboard Dusac, and he's in his living room, and he's hitting his walls because, you know, it doesn't have a lot of space. But he's trying. He's really practicing. He's practicing really hard. Others are. I'm doing this left-handed because my right hand is injured right now. So I'm gonna, you know, like, be compassionate with your teaching. Be compassionate with your students. I didn't get this week's video in. Okay, great. Get your videos in when you get a chance. Just if you're practicing, that's better than nothing. And what we have right now is all better than nothing. Because we don't have what we normally have. So there's some great instruction out there that is really poorly presented. There's some poor instruction that's really well presented. Take everything you can and find out what's good about it, and have compassion for all the failings, because none of us have done this before in the grand scheme of things. We're all trying to make things new.
Truth. Marguerite, closing thought.
Yeah, I guess to build on that, I think no matter what your experience level with this kind of teaching is, there is, if you are willing and able, which not everyone is right now because it's, like you said, extraordinary times, but there is something you can offer people, even if it's just this is a time we're going to get together and review someone else's class, or this is a time we're going to get together and drill. Just being that motivating, helping bring that motivation to other people is inherently of value right now. So if this is something you want to do, just go and do it. You're going to run into problems, you're going to figure them out, and it's going to be okay. And people are going to be willing to deal with that because they understand what's going on right now.
So my closing thought would be, on top of all that, I think the BOD just said in this recent publication that historical swordplay is now being practiced in more places in the SCA, or in the known world, than it ever has, because so many people are putting these things online. You've got small practice groups in small shires and baronies that are now clocking in and looking at my videos and looking at Jeff's videos and looking at Justin's and just getting a huge input of all the historical stuff. And I think part of that is because the historical stuff lends itself very well, if you know it, to pedagogy, to actually breaking down and building up a class, as opposed to free fighting until you do it right. So I'm excited for that. And there's been some people in the chat who've mentioned that they're hoping this will influence the SCA and maybe HEMA as well to do a better job of a structured practice and of drills and of form. So I think it's great. And that's so I echo what these three have said. Go forth and do, because you will be learning while you're doing it, but you'll also be passing on information while you're doing it. And I think that's all fabulous.
Just that being said, there's Robert Torataco's out there putting out instruction, and one of the guys around here is one of his students who's, if you're not into historical form, there's lots of people teaching. There's lots of options out there, and there's lots of reasons to put out the information that you have, right? Even if it isn't a manual or something like that. Like, there's all sorts of things that we can be giving to our community and talking about.
Truth. I was just talking about my own jams, what I was talking about there.
Believe me, I'm in on that jam.
I think also also feel free to get creative, get a little weird, and have fun, experiment with how you're teaching online and stuff. Like, our experience of teaching fencing online is probably just like the past few months and stuff. Like Jeff was saying, this is evolving quickly while trying different things. How he does it, how I do it, how Marguerite's doing it might not be the way that you want to do it. You might think of a better way. I want to hear and see everyone's different ideas for teaching online, because that's how I'm more than happy to take someone else's idea and try to implement it into what I do that's going to help people and stuff. So don't feel free to follow one of our templates and stuff. If you have your own idea, I would love to see it. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that's why I came here. I'm ripping you guys off. Also, Wendy made a great point in the chat too. I just wanted to bring that up too as we wrap up. This is a wonderful opportunity to really encourage people to learn about fencing in a way that doesn't put the emphasis on the win-loss ratio. We do so much emphasis in the SCA on your win-loss ratio. People go to practice and say, oh, I beat that Master Defense or the White Scarf 6 times at practice tonight. That's great. Well, you don't know what they were working on, and what were you working on, right? There's so many other things that we can be learning that aren't about a win-loss ratio. This is a wonderful opportunity to be exploring that. So.
Yep. I'm going to put some of my videos up real quick. I think that leads to him. No, that's not going to lead to him. Anyway, thank you all. I'm happy to stay on for another, 6 minutes and chat. We'll take it down to 9:30. You guys have been great. And this is, I think, answered a lot of people's questions and hopefully given some people a little bit more, what am I trying to say, verve to go out and do this and how to think through it. Happy to answer any more questions. I guess that's about all. I'm trying to find my own Tattershall YouTube page, and I'm not finding it right now.
I might be able to find it for you. I have you subscribed, so I should be able to find it. Right here.
That one's mine. I just put up mine. I'll get you Dave's. I think you're around here somewhere. All right.
Yeah, I keep landing on my studio page, which I don't want to share, of course.
Is it Tattershall DC? Is that the YouTube?
Yeah,
that's me.
I got it right here. There you go.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Claire, I exist. And you spelled it wrong.
We ask that at Tattershall a lot, though. Does David Biggs actually exist? Just saying.
I'm the wandering rector.
Did we hit everybody's questions?
I think so. A couple of them, I think I blended into other questions. Let's see. No, we didn't touch too much on breaking down lessons even further. If you guys want to talk a little bit more about that before we go. But I mean, to me, there's not a whole lot to say, because I think it is very useful to break down and really teach a single skill per video and then move on to the next. But like I said, I like incremental learning. I like to stack them, and then before you know it, you're actually doing tactics, and you don't even know that you're doing tactics until it's pointed out to you. That's the way I like to teach. That's the class I will be teaching.
I think it depends on the goal of your environment you're teaching in, especially if you're teaching a series, breaking it down and starting small and doing that things. Wendy and I also are teaching on the Kaid Rapier Discord, doing a lot of cut and thrust stuff. And that's a much more sort of ad hoc learning environment. So in those types of things, we try to make our classes a lot more broad and instruction a lot more kind of fundamental that people can kind of take and go kind of use more quickly than trying to start with very small incremental stuff. And if people want small incremental stuff, we can structure a class for that too. I think it's kind of like any class. It depends on the goal and how much time you have and what you're trying to get accomplished.
Yep. I'll tell you what would be challenging right now is if someone tried to teach here, I'll try and help you fix your fencing online, because that is a completely unstructured, depends on the person, depends on who shows up type thing. And it's one of those things, it's taken me years to even be able to do that in person, let alone on an online environment. Marguerite, you were saying something?
I would say, and how recent is their fencing footage that they have to submit, right? Yeah. Like at this point, like it's been, how many months?
Yeah, true.
I've done some like one-on-one like sessions with people, like obviously like my provosts and stuff here in the East, but like even people taking my classes, I've had some people be like, hey, can you do like a 15-minute call to check my form? I think I'm not doing this right. Or they'll send me in video and I'll give them some feedback and stuff like that.
I can do that with people that I've taught. I can do that with people that know where I'm coming from, and I know where they're coming from. But I'm talking about if you just kind of opened it up to the known world, kind of here, let me help you. And then you got all kinds of people's different styles and techniques. I think that would be really challenging to do online. Because, I mean, to me, I'd want to go all the way back to the beginning on what's going wrong, but it's hard to do when you don't have the feedback.
Yeah, you kind of have to know what their system is. Are they even fighting in a system? Because, like,
right.
What's the objective of what they were trying to do? Are they doing it wrong because their body mechanics are wrong? Are they doing it wrong because of something else and stuff? There's just, there's so many variables. It's
weird.
Much easier if they're working in the same system or you're already in your classes and stuff.
Yeah. All right, last minute, and I'm going to shut down the recording. So you guys have done great. As I think Jeff is pointing out here, he has conned me into doing probably a 12-week class on rapier. It's going to be on the Tattershall site. So this is going to be, I'm taking the things that we talked about here and I want to put them into action myself in a continuing class as opposed to a bunch of one-offs, which is what I've been used to lately. So that's going to be interesting for me, but this has been helpful for me to think through how I'm going to do that, how I'm going to break it down. So go y'all. All right, I'm stopping recording now. Time for alcohol.